Okay, beautiful. Hello again. We have our session recording. Thank you to Leslie for keeping us going in that regard. Again, welcome to day two of the Student Academy 2025. My name is Kate Sanka, the Executive Director here at Teach Access. We have been absolutely thrilled with the engagement from day one yesterday. We've had hundreds of people participating from around the world here to learn about accessibility and disability. Let me just get my notes up here. So we're going to kick off today with a careers in accessibility panel. And then we have 5 more sessions to round out the day. Yesterday was all about kind of what is accessibility? What is assistive technology? Why should we care about these things? Today is really great. We got through those topics, and now let's figure out what does it look like to do this work? What could it look like for you? So as we get into this, I also want to make sure we pause to thank our sponsors for helping to keep this event free for all of you to attend. That goes to our presenting sponsor, Merck. We also have support from Verizon, Microsoft, Google, Meta, and Salesforce. So a big thank you to all of them. Before I hand it off to our moderator today, a couple bits of logistics here. We do want to note that the chat we have right now limited so that attendees are only able to send messages to the host and panelists. This is an effort to help keep things a little more focused and not too distracting. That said, please feel free to message us, the hosts and panelists, with any questions, concerns. If we run into any issues with any of the accessibility, please let us know. Captions, we have captions today provided by a live captioner. To access those, you can click the CC icon on the bottom menu bar. It says show captions and it's a CC in a little square. We have ASL interpreters, American Sign Language interpreters. Find the interpretation button at the bottom of the menu bar. It's an icon that looks like a globe. You click that, select American Sign Language, and a new window will pop open that you can move around your screen for preferred viewing. For Q&A, we have the Q&A feature. Again, you can find that along the bottom of your screen. You can be dropping questions in there throughout the presentation, throughout the panel. When we get to Q&A, we'll be able to go through those. You can submit those anonymously as well, if that's your preference. And of course, like I said, if there are any other questions, concerns, accommodation needs that you have during the session, please use that chat feature and send it to us as the hosts, and we will take care of that. This session is being recorded and will be made available after the event. Okay, with all of that out of the way, I am absolutely thrilled to introduce our moderator for this distinguished panel today. Meena Das is a software engineer at Microsoft, and she's one of our Teach Access Board of Directors members. And so we get to work with her very often and really enjoy being able to do that. So Meena, with that, I will turn it over to you.
Hey everyone, it's so nice to be here. As Kate said, my name is Meena. I have been a software engineer at Microsoft for the past 3.5 years now. Yeah, it was my first job out of college, and uh, I've had a great time since then. Although my role is not directly in the accessibility field, uh, I, uh, I, I do try to embed accessibility in my day-to-day job responsibilities. I'm very excited to moderate this panel today. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So to get started with, uh, uh, can the panelists please introduce themselves? While you do so, uh, can you speak on what is your current role? Uh, Tell us more about your career journey and how you got into accessibility. What does a typical day look like for your job? And what role do you play in accessibility at your organization? We can start with Laura.
Absolutely. And I did see one comment or question come through in chat asking for panelists to also provide physical descriptions. So more than happy to do that. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Allen, and I use she, her pronouns. And for a short visual description, I am an Italian-American woman wearing brown glasses, a navy blue sweater, and I'm sitting in my home office with some plants behind me. I am so excited to be here today. So for my role, I am Director for Accessibility and Disability Inclusion at Google. And I've been at Google for 14 and a half years now and spent the last almost 11 years fully in the realm of accessibility at Google. I will say also, I have the honor and pleasure of serving in two sort of more volunteer capacities. One being within Google, I serve as the president of our Disability Alliance Employee Resource Group. And I'm happy to talk more about employee resource groups as a whole and how employees come together and support one another, whether they're employees with disabilities themselves, parents and caregivers of people with disabilities, or allies. And then, so I'm happy to talk about that more later. And also, I have the distinct honor of serving as the board chair for Teach Access. So I have just been the biggest fan of Teach Access for all of the years and been involved from the beginning. And I'm thrilled to be here with y'all today. So for my role at Google, I sit within what's called our Products for All team. So Products for All accessibility is our sort of centralized accessibility team at Google. And at Google, we take the approach of it's kind of a hub and spoke model. And I think a number of companies may have their accessibility teams set up in different ways, but I have heard that there are a number of companies that do sort of a similar hub and spoke model. So we have our central team, and the team that I manage is the program managers and accessibility analysts. So we focus on internal focused programs and external as well. So internally, we're working on how do we scale accessibility across all of Google? How do we work across all the different product teams? So for example, the Chrome accessibility team, the Android accessibility team, and all the other groups that are embedded within those different product organizations, helping to really drive accessibility within those teams and be part of the design discussions and launch discussions. So they don't report all the way through us. We report through many different areas of the company, and that is by design so that we can have the broadest influence. But a lot of my team's role is to sort of connect the dots and make sure that we're all working together and we're working towards this cohesive mission of driving accessibility. So our team does things like providing the internal standards and guidelines for how to run accessibility, educating Googlers about accessibility and its importance, running testing and evaluation for different product areas, and so on. And then another subset of my team is also focused on external engagement. So working very closely with different disability organizations across the world. So for example, like the National Federation of the Blind or the National Association of the Deaf, or Enable Africa, which is an organization we work very closely with in Kenya, and many, many others across the world, to be able to share our product updates, but also then seek deep, detailed feedback and be able to funnel that back into our different product area teams. So we do a lot of different external outreach at conferences and in newsletters and videos and things like that. But the real goal is to always be seeking that feedback and bringing it back into the product teams. So I can share more for sure. I know that, Meena, you asked about the journey. I'll keep it brief since I know I'm probably almost at my time allocation for this intro question. But my journey has to do with, I have a lived experience with visual impairment. So I have a very, very rare visual condition called choroidal osteomas. To this day, I've still never met anyone else with this condition, but essentially it affects my central vision. So for me, peripherally, things are mostly intact, the outer part of my vision, and centrally, it is a combination of many, many little pulsing neon lights that swirl all the time, covering and distorting my vision. So I can see about 2 letters at a time with one little field that remains in one eye. And I use that to sort of navigate a large mouse cursor and read tiny amounts of text at once in the right lighting conditions and the right contrast. But for everything else, I heavily rely on text-to-speech software and magnification and color inversion, things like that. So my journey to Google, I started at Google in a completely different part of the company within the sales organization. I studied business and marketing in college. I did not study accessibility, but I just had a lot of experience with needing to use assistive technology and facing the gaps and facing the barriers of very much so inaccessible materials within college and high school. So when I got to Google, I started just sort of providing product feedback and reaching out proactively to some of the teams, and just was received with such open arms of saying, yes, let's grab a coffee. Please tell me, how could this be better? And at the time, the team was very small, working on accessibility many, many years ago at Google. And I started doing side projects and just quickly realized that I was falling in love with this area because I felt like I really had a unique perspective to share and my perspective was valued. So I quickly tried to pivot full time, and it took a little while to learn more of the technical skills and whatnot, but I was able to transition, and now it's been about 11 years fully in accessibility. And I truly love it and feel grateful to be able to do the work. Back to you, Meena.
Thank you so much for sharing, Laura. Rob, do you want to go next?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Meena. And it is a pleasure to be here. Teach Access has been an important organization for accessibility for quite a while, and Adobe has been happy to be part of that organization. I am a older white male with glasses and a sort of lavender shirt that just happens to match the background, which is Laura mentioned their employee resource group. This is our logo for our employee resource group for employees with disabilities, which we call Access at Adobe. I am a manager of our product managers on the corporate accessibility team. And much like Laura indicated, and I think you'll hear most companies, I think, have a similar organization. We have a central corporate accessibility team that drives accessibility across the company by partnering with our product teams to make sure they have the knowledge, the resources, the tools. We have both product managers and engineers on our team who have expertise in specific areas of accessibility. And so they're able to work closely with the product teams to help them understand what they need to do to move forward to make our products accessible. Also in my role, I partner with our legal and policy teams on international standards and regulations and laws. We're all heavily focused on the European Accessibility Act right now. I also am the chair of the Accessibility Committee at the ITI, of which Steve from Google, Steve Kerr, is the vice chair. So one of the interesting things about the accessibility community is in my years in doing accessibility, it has gotten measurably larger, but it's still a fairly small community, and we all kind of get to know each other. I have been doing accessibility for over 25 years now, and I've had the opportunity to really touch on almost every aspect except development. So I'm not a developer like Meena, but I started my career as a software test engineer at Microsoft and sort of fell into accessibility. I was doing our international products, And my manager's like, hey, we need to do this accessibility thing. I don't know anything about it, but it's kind of a cultural thing. So you do international, so why don't you take it on? So that's kind of how I fell into it. And fell in love with it because number one, it is so impactful. I actually started my career at Microsoft as a software test engineer in games. And frankly, gaming is not going to have an impact on the world like doing work in accessibility. Um, but it also then gave me the opportunity to work in design at Microsoft doing accessible design. I worked on product teams. I developed at that time the accessibility standard that was used at Microsoft. Back in that day, we didn't have harmonized standards across the world. And so we kind of had to create our own harmonized standard within the company. I've worked in marketing. I've been a technical evangelist for accessibility. So there is a lot. What I really want you to get out of that is there's a lot of opportunity in the accessibility space. You don't have to join a corporate accessibility team to impact accessibility at our organization. We at Adobe have been very focused on getting our designers well trained in accessibility because I think everyone will say that good accessibility starts with design. And so there's a host of opportunities for you as you move forward in your career. One of the questions was what's the typical day like? We had a new employee start back in December, and they asked me the same question. And my answer is chaos. I don't have a typical day. I am called into meetings constantly with product teams. I'm trying to evaluate things from a legal standpoint. I'm dealing with vendors. It's just you never know what's going to be around the corner in the next meeting from a product team. Are you going to have to start at the basics with them, like you all got to do yesterday, what is it accessibility? How does assistive technology work? Or do they have very specific questions about, I don't know how to handle, the particular ARIA implementation for this particular, UI experience. And so, yeah, you can choose a career path that is very narrowly scoped, like design or development. But when you work at a corporate level for accessibility, it's chaotic. And I think that pretty much covers everything for me. So thank you, Meena, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you for sharing that, Ralph. That was great. Fred, do you want to go next?
Thanks, Meena. Hello, everybody. My name is Fred Moltz. I am a white male with gray and black pepper hair. I'm wearing my wonderful accessibility T-shirt that we have because the more I can share about accessibility, the greater it is. I have had the privilege and the honor to actually help create our accessibility program here at Verizon just about 10 years ago. So, as a chief accessibility officer, we were looking at accessibility from a digital perspective, whether that's customer-facing tools or employee-facing tools. We're taking care of everything. We're working back with our retail stores, understand how things are laid out within the store, if we can improve those experiences and have a lens that cares for accessibility. Um, we do a lot of testing on my team. I will say, might be a little biased saying this, but I have the best accessibility team out there in the world. These are some really dedicated and passionate people that show up to work every single day with the mission of we've got to do better. How do we find defects before somebody else does, so that we can identify them and then get them resolved before there's really an impact to a user. So I'm really fortunate in that perspective. In terms of the overall, what's a typical day? I think Rob said it the best. It is chaos. I have no idea what I'm walking into. When I say walking into, the first thing I do in the morning, I wake up and I roll over and I check my phone to see did anything blow up globally around here that I need to jump on. It's chaotic, but it's fun because you're able to help make a difference. And I have the ability to really influence a lot of people at Verizon, as well as externally from Verizon, whether that's our vendors or partners, advocacy groups, you name it. It's a broad spectrum. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about that we have done here at Verizon is last year on Global Accessibility Awareness Day, we opened up our Accessibility Technology and Innovation Lab in New Jersey. And that has been a game changer for us. We've opened this lab up and it's open to anybody. So whether you're a customer, a prospective customer, an innovator, somebody from the advocacy groups, we want people to come in because we know the best way for us to excel and evolve our program and our products and services is to listen to the end users. We don't know everything. We don't pretend to know everything. And we also may have a perspective based on a device of what we think it should be doing. And then we have somebody sit down and say, well, it does do that, but if you change this or that, it'd actually be so much better. And that's the feedback we are always searching for, that we're on a quest for. So again, we've been pretty lucky. Like I said, we're going on about 10 years. I've been here at Verizon now going to 25 years, and I will say this has been the most rewarding and exciting job I've had in my 25-year career here at Verizon. So really excited to be here with you guys. Really excited about all the work Teach Access does. I am a big fan of them. I think to Rob's point and Laura's point, they do an amazing job, Teach Access. And I think just the fact that you were each here today to learn just shows the power of Teach Access. And again, maybe you're not going to go into an accessibility field one day, but the knowledge you bring about accessibility, you will help to also shape the world. So your ability to kind of share this message about what accessibility is, why it's impactful, and why it's actually just, good for everybody, will actually make a big difference. So really thankful that Teach Access does this event. All right, Meena, I'm going to send it back to you.
Thank you so much, Fred, for sharing that. Okay, last but not the least, Sia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lucia Rios, and I am a Workforce Navigators Program Manager in the Office of Accessibility at Salesforce. I've been at Salesforce for 3 years now. I am a Mexican-American woman. I have straight black hair, and I'm wearing a purple shirt. I also sport a purple wheelchair as well. And so my accessibility journey kind of began when I was in college, navigating an older campus in a wheelchair. I think, especially, older campuses and being my first time kind of out of my community, just was a big kind of culture shock. But I was able to really get involved in accessibility on my campus as well. And so after college, I actually started my career at a Center for Independent Living, which is a nonprofit in the area that I live in. I'm from Michigan, but there are many other centers for independent living throughout the United States. So in your community, some of you may have already connected with them, some of you may have not. But I started out as an accessibility specialist where I trained in Titles 2 and 3 of the ADA. So really physical access, program access, all the how wide are doorways and how wide are, parking spots and heights and all that. So I trained on that. And so that really gave me a foundation of what was accessible programmatically and also physically. Working at the Center for Independent Living in nonprofit world. So I spent 15 years in the nonprofit world. And so through that, I got to really collaborate and do more also within my role. So I started working with youth with disabilities as well in workforce development. And so helping youth and also adults getting their first jobs and what jobs and skills that they had, but also accommodations and advocacy. So just really learning all that and helping others to understand that. Like I said, I was there for 15 years, and the past 3 years I've been at Salesforce. And so one of my, obviously going from nonprofit to corporate culture was very different. However, through my work with the nonprofit, we worked with a lot of different employee resource groups within other businesses within our community. So I kind of understood some of what businesses like a Salesforce or a Google were doing. And so, I took a chance when an opening came up in the Office of Accessibility, which, like Google, does a hub and spoke model. And so after about 6 interviews, I landed the role. So I was really excited. So one thing I can say is, definitely try, you know, um, apply for things that if you have the skill set, get up that courage. Because definitely I was like, no way, I'm never going to get this job. I didn't think I had enough experience, but I think because of the different types of experiences I had really helped as well. So today, like I said, I'm a program manager for our external workforce development program, which is called Workforce Navigators. And that's for people with disabilities. And we provide training opportunities and support for individuals who want to skill up, but who are also looking for roles within the ecosystem. So not only at our company, but also other companies who utilize Salesforce as well. So I every day, well, my baby, I call it, is our mentorship program, which is geared toward individuals with disabilities who are looking for careers within the ecosystem. And so I work a lot with individuals with disabilities all around the United States, in helping them identify goals that they may have and also training opportunities, and then also connecting them with a mentor at our company, Salesforce. And there is it's a 3-month mentorship program. And so I really work with both sides of it. So, which is awesome. I think for me too, as a job seeker with a disability, creating a program geared toward people with disabilities who are navigating that world, I think, helped me as far as to understand what other people with disabilities were looking for, but also, getting training that also was, no cost as well. There is no cost. And so, like I said, on a day-to-day basis, I do work with individuals. So my role is unique, but also because I'm involved in the Office of Accessibility, I am able to utilize my other skills that I do have regarding access. So I'm involved in our employee resource group, Ability Force. I also help out at the Disability Help Desk at our events that we have. And also I'm on a task force for accessibility. And so I'm still able to use that experience that I had and still bring it back to the company. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lucia. We can go to our next question now. So we all know that accessibility is a small field that is rapidly expanding and is quite competitive to get into. So my question is, what was the one piece of advice someone shared with you about how you can get into this field, and then how can they get experience and opportunities in the accessibility field? Does anybody want to go first?
I'm happy to go first. So I think the one thing that I certainly tell people, and I've heard elsewhere in my career, is that accessibility is a journey, and you want to invite people to join you on that journey. Someone a few weeks ago said something to me. They've been doing accessibility for 8 years, and they're like, I've learned everything about accessibility, and I want to learn something else. And I'm like, wow, interesting. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I'm still learning every day. Accessibility is such a diverse topic that you will never learn it all. and it's always changing, and it's always growing. So what I advise people to do is jump in. You can go to IAAP and you can get training and certification. You can volunteer. Find your passion, whether it's being a developer, whether it's being a designer, and learn how to integrate accessibility into your passion, because it fits into absolutely every aspect of the technology space. Actually, it fits into every aspect of the world. But if you're thinking about working in technology, there's not a single space in it. We have attorneys that focus on accessibility, so it doesn't matter what your passion is, accessibility can be integrated into that.
I also would like to add, this is Lucia, that I can't stress enough, especially connecting with local organizations that work on accessibility. Getting some mentorship that way, but also learning about the different aspects of access for different disability groups as well. And so I think that's what helped me on my journey, because access is not just about one particular group of people. Obviously, it's about all people with disabilities. And so sometimes the needs are going to be different for different types of individuals, or which is fine. So, even when I joined Salesforce, I learned a lot about product accessibility that I hadn't really had much. Mine was really focused on more physical access. And so, like Rob says, always being willing to learn, but always, keeping yourself updated about what's happening in the world of access.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I'll say I think the best you can do is continue to do your research, understand there's something new coming out all the time in the accessibility world, whether it's from an assistive technology perspective, a white paper. But I will say the volunteerism is amazing. So if you are going into a company, or you're already at a company that has an employee resource group, um, it's a great opportunity to listen to people, learn. There's always volunteer events. I know at Verizon, I'm pretty lucky. I'm actually one of the executive advisors for our advanced ERG group, and that's a group that's geared towards people with disabilities here at Verizon, and caregivers and so on and so forth. I also have the ability, I also have the opportunity where I'm on the board for Disability Rights New Jersey, where I try to give back my time there as being part of that board. But you learn about these different organizations that are out there, and they have a wealth of knowledge, but they also are looking for people to volunteer. And so you start getting those experiences as well. If you're really excited about accessibility and learning about it, try your volunteer event, meet people. I will say all the time, it's not one person's job for accessibility, it's everybody's job. So here at Verizon, I have the Office of Accessibility, but I do say it is a village mentality. I can't do accessibility myself. I need my partners in the design team. I need a developer. I need somebody in legal. I need somebody wherever it may be. So as you are going through your own personal journey, I would just suggest, if you were really that interested in accessibility, and I think you all are for being here today, just be an accessibility champion. Speak up, offer it, and then also one thing that people forget a lot is celebrate your wins. Even if you start small, because every little bit helps, and it helps with education and awareness. Let's just say you're making a PowerPoint or Google slide presentation. Make that accessible. Add the alt text to the images. Make sure it's the right font sizes, and share with people what you did and why that's so important. Every little bit helps. So.
Yeah, and this is Laura. Some great advice being shared here. I'll frame mine a little bit differently, in the sense of, so I was very, very lucky that when I was, just a few years into my career, and again, I mentioned earlier that I was in sales and advertising to begin, and I started doing side projects in accessibility. I had a manager who was so supportive, and she kind of reflected it back to me and said, like, Laura, do you realize that when you talk about your side projects in accessibility, you light up more than you've ever lit up talking about a sales presentation? And it was one of those moments where she didn't say it in a negative way. She just said, like, I think you should pursue this. Like, you should explore this. You seem to really love this. And that gave me a little bit of freedom. Of course, I was still doing my core job, but just doing this in nights and weekends. But it was because I was so energized and motivated by the work of trying to figure out how do we make these products better, that it sort of fueled my desire to learn more and dive into new assistive technologies outside of just the ones that I was personally using, and dive into understanding about the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines and beyond. So I would say, like, pay attention because it's been mentioned already in the discussion. There's so many types of roles that you could potentially go into in accessibility, or not in accessibility, but just sort of like representing the voice of accessibility. I would say pay attention to the things that energize you and motivate you and sort of light you up, because that will carry you a long way, especially as you're first getting started. So that would be one tip. And then in the field, like once you're actually in one of these roles, I totally agree with what's been said about, like, start somewhere. Start, even if you're joining a company that really they're not very far along on their accessibility journey. And it might just feel like, oh my gosh, we don't know, like there's just so much to do. We don't really know where to start. I would say start anywhere. Don't be intimidated, and help that company to say, like, let's pick one particular place and get going. And that some of the advice that I've received over the years is just like one step at a time. We might be looking at a huge mountain, and the mountain might be getting steeper in some cases. It might be getting harder, but just one step at a time as we're climbing this mountain and doing this advocacy and trying to influence all these different people and all these different roles to prioritize accessibility. We will get there. And then taking a moment to sort of pause and reflect a few years in, a few months in, of like, oh my gosh, we really have come a very long way. Yes, there's still a much longer way to go in this journey, and it will never end. Like, accessibility will never be, quote unquote, done. It's constantly evolving as technology evolves and as new things are coming out. Like, we're in this transformative moment right now with AI, and it's always going to be evolving. So we just have to continuously be learning and continuously be thinking about what's the best way to make this most accessible. So one step at a time, but also pause, look at the view, see how far you've come.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know Fred just talked about that we should celebrate our wins. So I do have like a slightly similar question to that. So what is your favorite part about working in accessibility? Do you have a proudest moment in your accessibility career?
I'll jump in. I don't have one. I have so many. Um, there's days where I think back of our early days starting the journey, where everything just seems so impossible. And then there's days like today where I'm thinking of a challenge. I'm like, this seems like it's gonna be impossible, but we know we're gonna get it. And we've had so many good experiences. And I think the one thing I do, don't want to make this a negative scenario, but just keep in mind, this is real life. There will be challenges and you will have setbacks as you go along your journey. It's a matter of how you learn from that to then do even more. And so I'd say for me, um, creating a program, creating a policy, creating a lab, um, hiring amazing people to be part of this journey with me. And I will say, I think the best part is just the people I meet on a daily basis, whether they're inside Verizon or outside Verizon. I hear so many stories from people, either with or without disabilities, that are in the field that are just so inspiring that I love bringing them back to my team and sharing them. So I don't think there's one thing I can say is the greatest thing. It is just every day just seems to be an opportunity to really make a difference in the world. So I'm just fortunate that I work for a company that's so dedicated and committed and invested in it. So hopefully I answered your question.
I can go next. This is Laura, because I'll piggyback on your response, Fred. I was going to say two things. So one, I echo what you said about the people. I really do believe that since so many people who have entered the field of accessibility have some sort of connection to it, somewhere, somehow, they're connected and they feel like this is mission-oriented work. And I feel it like in this panel today, you know, Fred and Rob and Lucia, we don't work closely together, but we are all united by this mission. And of course, Meena as well as our wonderful moderator. We're connected. We're all marching towards the same goal, even though we're doing it from our respective corners of the universe and from our different platforms. Like, it's all the same goal that's uniting us. And that's just so wonderful of like the community that's built here. I definitely don't take that for granted. But the other aspect that I wanted to mention was just the possibility of the impact of the work. So we often sort of think about this in the sense of what could be just incremental progress for some people may be absolutely transformative for someone with a disability. So I think back to like when we first were launching voice assistants, like, you know, an Alexa or a Google Home and Nest Home, all these devices that are now out, right? And have one in our, you know, thinking about if somebody has one in their kitchen and they're using it for their voice to sort of be talking and asking for cooking instructions. It's a nice convenience to be able to do that if their hands are wet, if they're washing their hands, they don't want to type something into their phone. It's a nice convenience. But for somebody who doesn't have the ability to use their hands, or perhaps doesn't have hands to be able to type into a phone, the ability to navigate by voice like this is transformative. So like that impact can really, really scale, which is really just exciting to think about. And then in terms of favorite moments, I will just share one quick example. So before I moved into the role that I have on the central Products for All team at Google, I spent 7 years on the Chrome and Chrome OS accessibility team, really driving the products and just really, you know, building out the assistive technologies built into Chromebooks and the different features in the Chrome browser, making them work with all the third-party assistive technologies. And it took a long time. We started from a place where it was early days on Chrome OS, early days in Chromebooks. We had to really build out the entire map. We had to hire a lot of people and make the case to leadership to build up. But we came a really long way in that set of years and beyond. The team has been continuing to make progress. And a few years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Kenya for the first time in partnership with that organization I mentioned earlier called Enable. And they do a lot of work supporting youth with disabilities across Kenya. And we got to go and help donate a set of Chromebooks to a few different schools for blind and low vision children. And I got to go and lead an all-day workshop on using the tools for, you know, magnification and contrast adjustments and screen reading and all of these different things, and get to actually just have these children, many of whom were using a computer for the first time, finally be able to navigate and listen using a screen reader. And it was just one of those full circle moments of like thinking back to when I was in school and I was the only kid in the classroom with a device. And it was such an alienating factor for me. And I didn't really know how to handle it. And just how far we've come of now, like, look how excited so many students are to be able to have these devices, whatever devices they may be. I'm just talking about Chromebooks right now, but a device in a classroom that allows them to turn on their accessibility features, navigate their homework assignments and things like that, just with whatever assistive tools they need, and just like get that out of the way so that they can actually learn. It's just, we've come so far. We're not done, but that was a really proud moment to get to see just the impact of the work that the team put in for years and years to get to that point.
I'll jump in. I agree with, or I'll echo what Fred said, that I don't have a proudest moment. And I think that's actually one of the exciting things about working in the accessibility field, is you have an opportunity to have lots of proud moments. You accomplish something that's going to impact people. And you can be proud about that, and you should be proud about it. And so, you know, it's it kind of is going from proud moment to proud moment. And that's kind of exciting in and of itself. I'm someone who gets bored really easy. Like many people probably, but, I went through, I think, 5 different majors before I graduated. I went to law school. I've had a whole bunch of different jobs, and I keep them for 2 to 5 years, and then I move on to something new because I've already learned all that, and I'm bored. I don't get bored in accessibility. As I said before, there's always something new to learn. And as Laura mentioned, and I think Fred mentioned as well, technology is always evolving. Now we've got this whole new exciting space of AI. In fact, we have a new role in our company. One of our product managers is doing both AI ethics and accessibility. And it's like, wow, what an exciting opportunity to figure out how these things merge together. At Adobe, we're actually accessibility falls under the ethical innovation team. And that's really a key part. This is all about being ethical and treating people with respect. So it's an exciting field. You will never get bored. If you get bored in accessibility, it's because you're not paying attention, because there's always something around the corner to learn.
Thank you so much for sharing. We do have a lot of questions in the QA chat. So I'm gonna go try to choose a few ones here. So yeah, the first question was entering the accessibility field can be tough, especially for juniors. Why are entry level roles so scarce? And then are there any mentorship or internship programs to help newcomers gain experience? This was specifically for Laura, but anybody can go ahead and answer.
I can start. I'd love to hear others' thoughts. Yeah, I definitely hear you that it seems like there are fewer entry-level roles these days. I think a little bit of why we might be seeing that is, I know at least for Google, our hiring has just been slower in the last few years. And that's just a sad reality. I wish that we could be growing and growing further, but the hiring just overall has been slower. And I think that probably is contributing. We have had a number of entry-level positions that we've hired across our teams over the years, though. So hopefully that will have an uptick in the future. And then as far as internship programs, for Google, we just have a large one internship program that you can apply for. It's not an accessibility internship. It's just like a Google internship based on whatever role type you're looking for. If it's in software development, if it's in design, whatever it may be. And so when you apply for that, if you get accepted, then you're able to indicate your interests and sort of match you. So if our accessibility team said, hey, we need an intern in this area, and then somebody had said in their interest that like their skills or interests might match up with accessibility, then we'll have that pairing done. But it's not quite as straightforward as I wish I could just go out and say, I'm going to hire an intern and it'll be fully about accessibility. It's a little bit more complicated just because it's such a large scale company and it's a global program. But I would definitely be curious to see what others have to say.
I'll add to that. I think, as I mentioned before, focus on your passion and apply for those jobs. You know, if you're looking for just an accessibility role, quite frankly, I think a lot of the technology companies today have more mature programs around accessibility. So they are looking for more experienced people. That's just the reality. But if you're a designer, if you're an engineer, you know, whatever your passion is in technology, there's an opportunity to use that. And I know at Adobe, we try to, and actually I know Microsoft does this better than certainly than we do, but at Adobe, we try to include, you know, looking for people with experience in accessibility in our job descriptions. But what I do know is even if it's not there, the fact that it's on your resume gives you a leg up over some of your competition because pretty much everybody is caring about accessibility now. And if I'm a developer, developing or a manager of developers in, we'll say, in Photoshop at Adobe, and I see a resume come across my desk and it's like they got accessibility experience, I'm like, I'm interested in that person because I don't have a lot of people on my team that know accessibility and I don't want to have to train you in accessibility. So if you come in with that, so don't focus on what the job description is. Focus on your passion and bring that in as an additional opportunity for you. I will also say, I mean, we have a similar intern program, although each organization is allowed to ask for an intern. So we can, as the accessibility team, we say we need an intern, you know, and so then we look for an intern that, and we interview that intern to bring them in. But what I have seen happen year over year is most times interns come in and they are encouraged to come up with a project. You know, they're not brought in to do something specific, but they're brought in to learn and to, at the end of the year, they present their project. Every year, there are a number of interns who choose accessibility as their project. You know, so it's like, I'm an intern for Adobe Express. Great. I get to work on a project, and I've decided I want to work on the project of what's the best way to, you know, present images that are being created by AI in an accessible way. So don't don't limit yourself by the words on the page. You know, get in and get a job, and then use your accessibility skills to enhance that job.
Yeah, Rob, I'm going to jump on that. I agree. I think when it comes to internship programs, same with Google, right? We have one large program. So there's not really an accessibility internship here at Verizon. Uh, and yes, for the person I asked the question, there are scarce jobs in the accessibility field overall. And the different levels of those jobs are going to be scarce by itself as well. I know I'm fortunate. I just had this happen to me a couple weeks ago. I was doing a speaking event in December in New York City, and I was able to meet this wonderful woman, pretty much right out of college, and was IAP certified, had a little bit of experience in the real world and doing some testing. Ran into her again just a month ago up at MIT, and I was doing a speaking engagement for them for their virtual hackathon. And she was like, "What do you think in terms of jobs?" I said, "Well, I said I do have a contractor role that's opening up." I said, let's talk about this. Maybe this would be a good fit." And it was. And the reason why I was able to kind of look at her is because one, she was just full of energy. She was, saw her at two different events. She made sure she said hello to me and was asking me, hey, it was asking just for my help, like, hey, just look at my resume. And I was like, sure. I was like, I think I got a job for you. So I would say the accessibility world is one of those worlds where you have to be creative to get things done around here. There's always going to be a limited budget. There's never enough budget for accessibility. You can have one of the best budgets out there or one of the lowest budgets out there. There's still never enough budget because there's so many things you want to do and accomplish. So people who are creative, persistent, I will say they always find a way into my world. I've actually hired people who don't have true accessibility experience, but they are dedicated, passionate people for the mission. They want to do a good job. And we're like, you know what? We'll train you. So I've seen it all different ways. I mean, a lot of our majority of our employees and contractors are all very skilled at accessibility, but we've brought some people on recently that weren't quote unquote in the accessibility field. And it was just because they brought an energy and a skill set that we know will actually blend really well into our world. So I would just say, just stay positive, get out there, and because there are a limited number of jobs, but I think to Rob's point, show that energy in a different job that maybe you're excited about. Share about accessibility there, get people thinking, because no matter what job you take today, maybe a year from now you're not going to be in that job, or another opportunity is going to pop itself up. So if you have the accessibility driving you, and now you've got this product side of it or development side of it, when you're going for this new opportunity, take the best of both worlds and help market yourself that way. Hopefully that makes sense.
I want to just add too that I think it's a mistake to think of, in most cases, accessibility as a role. Yes, I work on the corporate accessibility team and it's my role, but accessibility should be the responsibility of everybody working in technology. If you're a UI developer, if you're a UX designer, you should be doing accessibility. And so you're not going to see a job application for, hey, we're looking for an accessibility designer, because we're not. Every designer should do accessibility. So we're looking for a designer. So it's not, it shouldn't be a role, in reality, because it's everybody's role to do accessibility.
I'm going to jump into the next question. So the next question is have you encountered people who don't consider the accessibility issue that that important? And if yes, how have you approached that conversation?
Who wants to start?
Oh, Laura, I think you should, since you asked. I can't wait to hear the answer on this.
Okay, I will say yes, definitively yes. We definitely encounter people who do not think that accessibility is as important as we think it is. I think there are a lot of reasons for this, though. I think in most cases, it's because they don't understand. They don't understand the actual impact. They might just be looking at, maybe they're in a leadership position or they're a product manager and they're trying to get something shipped and they have a list of 100 things they need to get done or approved, and accessibility is one piece of it. Maybe they don't fully understand that the bugs that are remaining for accessibility are completely blocking somebody with a particular disability from using their feature. So sometimes I think it's coming from a place of not knowing or just ignorance on the subject. In other cases, there may be just a prioritization call, and maybe a leader isn't willing. Like, they're going to look for, okay, well, maybe we're going to launch this thing and then we'll figure this part out afterward. How about that? Let's have an exception for a few months and then we'll figure it out after as a fast follow. We have to navigate all kinds of discussions like this. And it certainly helps when you can put processes in place across the companies of saying, in order to launch, you must meet this sort of level of baseline accessibility, and working on like systematizing that. I think that's been very, very helpful for us. but you'll still encounter it. And this is where I would say it's important to think about the different argument that will resonate most with the person who you're trying to convince. So a lot of what we do in accessibility is influencing without authority. Like, this is a huge part of my job. That should be my alternate job title, right? Like, it's a huge part. So I think one thing that I've learned over the years is different parts of the business case for accessibility will resonate with different people or different leaders. So some people might just be drawn by, oh my gosh, this is the right thing to do for humanity. I'm going to figure out how to get this done and prioritized. Some people might be drawn by, okay, well, what's the potential sales impact or sales loss? Like, maybe they're more numbers oriented, and you can help to sort of make that case as part of the argument. Some people might look at the litigation potential of, if we don't do this, is there risk? And how do we reduce that risk of getting sued? There are so many different aspects to this sort of business case. I remember one particular meeting with one of our very, very, very senior people at Google many years ago, where, quite honestly, we did not have enough people staffed on some of our teams for our product teams. We were trying to make the case to him of, we need more people focused on accessibility. And I asked his administrative business partner, so the person who sort of like helps him set up his kind of like a chief of staff role, I asked what resonates with him, what makes him make decisions, like what helps him to make decisions. And she was like, okay, he's a straight shooter and he wants to understand the bottom line, like impact of what's going on. So we went into that, and and she mentioned he likes to make sure his products are of high quality. And that was a really important piece for us to understand. We went in and we're complete straight shooters. And we brought a few different Googlers with disabilities to showcase the difference between like what was breaking down in products that this leader oversaw. And he just was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. That's a terrible experience. And from that point on, he then had quarterly meetings with us. We actually did have headcount growth. This was, again, years ago. But it sort of like was what made him have that aha moment. And of course, you're not going to always be able to figure that out with every single person you're working with. But I would say, like, try to figure it out. Try to figure out what's going to resonate and what's going to convince somebody to make that change. But yeah, would love others' tips. This is a constant challenge that we all navigate in this field.
Laura, I'm going to dovetail off that because, I think it's important for people to understand. I joke around and tell people I always have at least 3 talk tracks ready to go in my head. Pretty much the same categories that you brought up, right? I will say, I think the number one issue is the education, was accessibility. People, they're afraid of it. There are people who are just afraid of the word accessibility. They don't understand enough. They don't understand that it's actually pretty easy to implement, WCAG guidelines into your products and services from a digital perspective to make them accessible. It's not, we're not trying to like build a rocket ship and, go to Mars, right? I mean, there's some things that we do that are pretty simple. I mean, simple things like alt text on an image, but there are people who don't understand it because they haven't been exposed to it. And so I think there's a fear factor. They think automatically it's going to add more time to my product being developed. I'm not going to get to market. I'm not going to be able to launch it, so on and so forth. When they understand that, when you build something accessible, you're creating you're designing something that's great for everybody. And again, if you have a product or service you're trying to provide that's going to provide people with independence in their lives, that's what counts. And then it goes back to your brand. Like, at least I know at Verizon, we care about our brand. We take a lot of pride in our brand. And so do I want to be the brand that is there for 75% of potential customers or 100%? And I say that a lot to people, internally or externally. And they're like, what do you mean 75%? And I'm like, well, if 1 in 4 people in the United States have been deemed to have a disability because they identify, and we know that number is actually much higher, that means that if you're not building accessible, then you're only building for potentially 75% of your potential new customers or existing customers. And I don't know, from a business perspective, I think if you're going to have money and you want to market something, you want to try to get as many new subscribers or customers, whatever it is, and not just 75% of it, And I think the other thing is when we talk about 1 in 4 people, it's always interesting because then you start looking around the room. Well, I might have a disability. That one might, maybe they do, maybe they have an invisible disability, or maybe somebody in their family has it. So it just starts, you start connecting the dots and understanding that it's just the right thing to do. I mean, it's also a legal thing to do, but it is the right thing to do. And I think once you can actually open up the dialogue with somebody, I would say 99% of the time people are like, that makes a lot of sense. And you can show them it's really not going to slow you down. They're like, well, then we should be doing this. So it is interesting. There are people who will come out. That's a very fair point. That will be like, why should I care about accessibility? Or how many customers is that really? And I don't care if it's one customer. It's just the right thing to do. So again, you got to understand the talk tracks. And one thing you'll probably always hear is know your audience. And that's really important. You got to know your audience when you're having these conversations.
And I want to add something here. This is Lucia. So, and this is a pretty basic, I guess, example for me, but in my early career, I had started the role of accessibility specialist, like at the nonprofit, and my predecessor had a different way about approaching business. And so my predecessor would send letters that were very like the tone was very threatening and very, very just kind of. So when I started going out and connecting with these businesses and these individuals, they didn't want to talk to me because they're like, oh no, you're with that organization and you're going to sue me or this is going to happen. And I was like, wait a minute. It's just little me. I want to get to know you, want to talk about, this. And so I learned right away that there is a way that you can talk about accessibility and advocate about it without being adversarial about it too. And so that was, I think, the greatest lesson for me, because then as I approached and started my career more and more, I would get people then coming to me for assistance regarding access, and so I think too, even when I think there's passion. Some of us are very passionate. I'm a very passionate person about disability inclusion and accessibility. But I think there you also have to have that middle of not, of also seeing what the other side is too and coming together. And so that's something that I think I've noticed in corporate culture as well. As far as you can't go in and be like, we need this now and demand it, because that's not going to work. You're going to shut people off. And so I think if you come in and really hear their side, you like Laura had said, you kind of like need to kind of teach them and work together and show them, because I think a lot of times people are very they're turned off, or they're like, oh no, it's going to cost a lot, or oh, I'm going to get sued. And you don't want that. Our role is not to do that, but our role is to make our everything accessible for all people. So anyway, that's just my basic.
I'll just add one other quick thing. First of all, when that question was asked, we were all laughing because this is an everyday thing. The other thing I want to mention, and this kind of comes back to looking for jobs in accessibility. We know that accessible code is better code. Accessible design is better design. So there's kind of two ways to look at impacting. One is from the bottom up. You as a developer who knows accessibility, if you write accessible code, your code's going to be better. When people review it, it's going to be better. You're going to have fewer bugs. You're going to have, and that's going to have an impact. But the other side is the top down. And that's what I think a lot of what Laura and Fred were talking about, where how do you influence the leadership? And one additional way to do that is to make sure that it gets into their OKRs, their objectives, and their key results, because that's what they're held accountable to every year. And if it's not there, it's going to be deprioritized because they have other things that are going to be more important. And this is actually the first year. I was excited. We talked about, proudest moment. One of my proudest moments was at Microsoft when it became part of the OKRs for Satya. We just got this as an OKR, as the OKRs for Adobe this year. And so those are exciting times, because that means all of a sudden the executives are paying more attention and looking at and realizing, oh, I didn't realize we were this bad. You know, you give them results and they're like, oh my God, how could that be? So yeah, so think about it from both angles. You as an individual can have a huge impact by making sure accessibility is part of your work because it will influence others.
So I think we have time for just one more question. We had some questions about certifications. So the question was, are certifications helpful for landing a role in the accessibility field? They were more curious from a hiring perspective.
You're on mute, Rob.
Yeah,
Sorry, thought I clicked it. I've hired a lot of different people in a lot of different careers over my lifetime. And quite frankly, I look for experience over certifications or over education every day. So if you come to me and it's like, I have volunteered here and I have been doing this work and I've done that, it's like, okay, I know that you know some stuff. The certification means that I know you can pass a test. But certifications always look good on the resume. It doesn't hurt to have the certification, and it can help. But I would balance that with experience.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's great for people to do that certifications. It shows a desire to take that step, learn about it, and then pass and get that certification. I'm like Rob though. I'm always looking at the life experiences. What's your energy? Did you just take a test or a series of tests to get your certification? Do you understand, like, when it comes to a device? For me, like, do you understand the accessibility settings in this device? It's not just about some type of screen reader on a device. You know about all the other settings and availability that's on a device. That shows me somebody who's really kind of went that extra step. But I think the reality, though, is, if I'm hiring a new accessibility role here at Verizon, okay, and so again, I do have a number of accessibility roles that occasionally pop up. I'm very fortunate. Most of my employees, they have never left me since we started this program. So when we add new headcount, it gets filled, and unless we get additional headcount, we're not backfilling people. But the reality is this, though: if, let's say, a company posts for an accessibility position, you're going to have your HR team and recruiter who's going to look through all the resumes before it gets to the hiring manager. So if you have that certification on that resume, it will help you from that perspective, because that might be the only way you're going to get to somebody like myself, who is the hiring manager.
I know we're coming up on time. I'll just add, totally agree. I think it can be helpful. It's not going to be the golden ticket, but it will certainly be helpful. And especially if it's something that is part of your learning journey of understanding more in this field and will help you actually, the actual concepts you learn through the certification, that's fantastic. So yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
And one last thing, a certification, I think Fred mentioned this as well, and Laura, a certification shows you care enough to learn. So that is a good point in your favor.
Hi everyone, this is Kate. This is Kate Salka from Teach Access. I'm so sorry to cut this conversation off. I think it's been absolutely incredible. I mean, I think last I saw, yeah, we have 30 unanswered questions, which is just incredible. I think that shows the level of engagement and excitement people have had about this topic. So I want to extend a huge thank you to all of our panelists for making the time to be with us today. I mean, I was taking notes on some of the amazing bits of wisdom and insight you've all dropped. An extra special thank you to Meena for being such an excellent moderator. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm going to share a little bit about what's coming up next. So please stay with us for the next session of our Teach Access Student Academy 2025. We'll be hearing from Jeff Zundell from LinkedIn, and he'll be talking about some accessibility principles. This will start in about 15 minutes, which would be 12:30 p.m. Eastern or 9:30 a.m. Pacific. And this session is going there. It's not a long one, but it will go quickly. It will introduce some of the concepts of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, a little bit getting into what that means, what the principles are, and how accessibility practitioners can use these principles to create more inclusive and accessible digital experiences for everyone. So we really hope you'll stick with us, and we will be with you in a bit. Thanks, everyone.